Hello and welcome to South Asia Chat, a podcast series brought to you by the Institute of South Asian Studies at the National University of Singapore. My name is Saeeduddin Faridi. I'm a research analyst here at ISAS, and I will be your host for today's episode, where we look at the recently concluded presidential elections in Maldives. 2 weeks ago, Maldives' then incumbent leader Mohamed Solih conceded defeat, paving way for Mohamed Muizzu to take over the presidency in the island nation. Mohamed Muizzu has won 54% of the votes in an election campaign that ran on issues like corruption, sovereignty, and the India-China balance. To discuss the election and its consequences in detail, we are delighted to have with us Dr. Rasheeda Didi, Senior Research Fellow for South Asia Focus Network Maldives and member of the Higher Education Council of Maldives. Dr. Didi, thank you for joining us again for this post-election analysis episode.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me. Thank you.
Starting off with the first question, how do you look at the election results and what specific factors influence the outcome of the recently concluded election?
I think a few factors influenced the election, the outcome of the election. One would be the division in the Maldives Democratic Party, because the people who had voted for the new party that was formed, called the Democrats, they would have voted for MDP because they are part of MDP, the Maldives Democratic Party. So that's like several votes lost, and according to my calculation, in which I had added those votes, their votes plus MDP votes, when I added both of them, then it gave a higher number than the president-elect Dr. Muizzu's votes. So that's one factor. Then I think also too many unnecessary posts created by the government was a concern for citizens, particularly those who think about this. So then you might ask, well, what's wrong with it if unnecessary posts are created? Well, unnecessary posts means, of course, that there's a drain in the budget, which the government cannot afford right now. Unnecessary posts, I'll give you an example. In one mission meaning embassy, overseas embassy, about 10 years ago, or about even 8 years ago, there were only 4 to 5 people, foreign service workers in that embassy. But now they have something like 17. And some of the embassies, when I say embassies, High Commission, embassy, everything, okay? Basically embassies, they're all embassies. And in some of the one of the embassies, from what I understand, there are 35 or so people. Now, do we need this many people? No, we don't, because our embassies are not that busy. It's not like the United States or even Singapore in Southeast Asia would be so much busier with ASEAN countries and so on. And India in South Asia, Indian embassy, Pakistan embassy, particularly Indian embassy, will be very, very busy with all its work around the world. So the thing is, for little Maldives, we do not need so many people. And in this, there's corruption involved. Corruption in the sense that these are people employed by the government, approved by the president, of course, who could not refuse the request made by some people. Many of them are, from what I understand, the parliamentarians. Now, their children are employed in many embassies and in many government offices. Now, their children are employed, and from what I understand from the people who work with them, they don't do any work. They sit there high and mighty, of course, making great demands unnecessary demands, and so on. So this is a factor that thinking Maldivians consider. Another factor is being too close to India. The relationship with India is unprecedented in history. In the relationship with India, I'm not counting China here. So the rumor people have been hearing that there's a lot of Indian military personnel, including RAW, the intelligence agency of India. So that's scary for people. And of course, the opposition had been scaring people, saying that soon we will lose sovereignty if Indian military presence is allowed in the Maldives. We would lose sovereignty, we would lose our country, we would lose this, that, and then India is controlling our country. In fact, that's also a rumor that goes on. And the point is, whether it's true or not, it affects people's thinking. It frightens the people. So those who are not analyzing both sides are going to believe what the rumors are saying, and they are frightened. So that would be one of the main three factors, I would say.
I think taking a cue from that answer, and thank you for explaining those reasons so well. One of the important themes that comes from this is the India-China balance, and the new president has been labeled as pro-China and anti-India in the media. And we heard him in a recent interview in which he gave to Al Jazeera, where he said that the presence of Indian troops on the island is a threat to its sovereignty. And he has since made another statement saying that he will request India to remove troops from the Maldives on the first day of his presidency. So, in light of this background, what do you think will be the future course of Maldives' relationship with India and China?
I think the role of India-China, the relationship with India, Maldives' relationship with India-China is exaggerated actually, and it's done by foreigners. For the Maldives, the Maldivians are thinking more of themselves in the domestic scene. They are thinking of shelter. When the new president comes, they're thinking of shelter, housing for them. Will the new president, give us housing? Will he build extra and more housing facilities? And then will there be an improvement in the hospital? Or will there be other hospitals? Now, the hospital is, unfortunately, I'm sad to say this, it is very limited, and Maldivians tend to go to India or Sri Lanka, and those who can afford more further countries, going to the richer countries, they would go to Singapore, they would go to Thailand, and then of course even richer will go to Europe, the UK, the Germany, etc., etc. So the point is, for the excuse me, for the average Maldivian, these are the important things: health facilities, shelter, and then so on. Yeah. It's a foreign idea to exaggerate. Now, yesterday I was on another podcast, and the whole time they also spoke about India, China, India, China, India, China. This is a foreign concept. It's highly exaggerated by the foreigner, I would say. And the Maldivians are also thinking of, amongst other things, tax. Will we be taxed? And on what? And how much? Domestic issues are more important for the Indians. Then you talk about future course. I presume the Maldives will not be this close to India the way the current government is operating. But of course, India is India We will have a close relationship with India. It's never going to change. The India, quote unquote, the India first policy will remain, I would imagine, because it has been installed by or initiated by the former president, President Yamin Abdul Qayyum, to whose party the current president-elect belonged then. So I would think he would stay with that. India first cannot be ignored. India cannot be ignored as the major power in the region and also a security provider in the Indian Ocean and South Asia, and for the Maldives particularly. Then it will not resume, obviously, the previous administration's close alliance with China. I don't think it will resume that closeness with China, because during the previous administration, rules were bent, laws were made to give infrastructure facilities to enable China win bids for infrastructure and so on. So extraordinary steps were taken, actions were taken to excuse me, to please China and give China the role. But out of the two, I would say China will be closer to the next government, President-elect Muizzu's government.
Thank you for that interesting outlook on how sometimes this is the India-China conversation is dominated in the media when we talk about Maldives. But I want to also perhaps get an impression from you on other regional and global powers like Australia and the US. Both of these countries now have new resident ambassadors in Maldives. How do you see the future course of relationship with these countries of the Maldives?
Future course will continue as before, which means good relationship with both of them. And their presence, their decision to have resident embassies in the Maldives is not because of their relationship with the Maldives. It is because they are scared of China. China encroaching into the Indian Ocean, strengthening its steps in South Asia, strengthening its relationship with Maldives, and so on. So it's not because the relationship between the Maldives and them, I mean, it was always good, and it continues to be good. I think it will still continue to be good. Maybe if there is a resident ambassador in the country, there will be closer relationship, of course, obviously because of the physical proximity of the two governments. So yes, it will continue to be good.
Coming to some of the domestic challenges, so how do you look at the president's capacity to deal with the country's economic situation, particularly given the debt situation, which now stands at close to 113% of the country's GDP in 2022?
I think the president is capable. Of course, in any government, the president is not the one who has knowledge of everything. He would employ people. So if the president has the sense, which I think he would, sense to employ an economic minister, an able and uncorrupt, I repeat, uncorrupt economic minister, and an able, knowledgeable and uncorrupt finance minister, he can deal with the economy. And hopefully things will improve with the newly elected president, and hopefully he will not be corrupt enough to take government money into his pocket. So if he if he decides to do that, of course, the economy will go bonkers as it is. It will not rise. And yes, that it's not nice, but that's a fact.
Another important issue is climate change, and perhaps that's a more existential form of a challenge. How is the new president likely to deal with the impact of climate change on the Maldives?
Party wise, climate change crisis is more associated with the Maldives Democratic Party because of former President Nasheed's voice. Globally, he expressed the concern very strongly. He had been expressing in international fora, and international other meetings, bilateral meetings, etc. So it had been associated with the current government, MDP. I am not sure. I did not hear much about climate change issues from President-elect Muizzu. I may be wrong. I'm not always. I don't always hear everything, every word he had said. But I do not associate that much of change consciousness with him, because he built, when he was the housing minister of housing during the previous government, he built an artificial beach on Male, which according to people who know climate and marine biology, etc., disrupts the currents a little bit, and it disrupts other factors. It is, I don't know, I don't have a technical answer for this, because I'm not an engineer and I'm not a climate expert, but just looking at things that had happened, I don't think that he will do that much for regarding climate change. Now, also, voicing is something. Also, making promises during the campaign speeches is something, which everybody does. Great campaign speeches, everyone makes. But actually, doing something is different. Actually, working on it, implementing the ideas in terms of projects, etc., different sums. It seems reclaiming land is the fashionable thing in the Maldives now. There are still many uninhabited islands, but many resorts are built on reclaimed land. Reclaimed meaning drying the sea. Now, is this, again, I'm not a marine biologist, so I don't know the scientific values of this, but according to people who know, this is not a good thing. And I have always wondered why, since we have so many uninhabited small islands, I don't understand why the lagoon. The lagoon is the shallow part of the sea that's near the island. Has to be has to be reclaimed, and sometimes apparently the current president also wanted to, or expressed his desire to claim land, reclaim sea, lagoon part in Ba Atoll, and build a resort. Now, we have enough islands, so why build a resort? And according to divers, they say that this will, of course, the structures, the steel panels or whatever it is, that grids and whatever that goes into the sea, is going to destroy the ecosystem. So we just have to wait. I hope the president takes good care of this and thinks clearly, brings people with knowledge to his government to deal with this kind of thing.
These are some of the things that we will keep a lookout for over the next term of the president. But Dr. Didi, thank you so much for joining us today on the podcast and sharing your insights with us.
Thank you for inviting me. All the best to you in your work, and hopefully we will see again.
Thank you very much. You were listening to South Asia Chat. You can learn more about our work by visiting us at isas.nus.edu.sg. You can also get updates on our research and publications through social media. You can find us on Twitter, LinkedIn, Facebook, and Instagram.